Welcome back everyone to our review of every chapter in Kirby Manga Mania. Last time we finished up Volume 3, so we're going to jump right into Volume 4. But before we do, make sure to check out our merch store in the description below, where you can buy our shirts, mugs, and stickers to enrich your gameplay experience. Without further ado, let's just get right back into it. Next up is Volume 4, Chapter 1, Adeline in Love with Love. The chapter begins with Adeline talking about how there's no normal boys around Planet Popstar, just weird creatures. Ku then concludes that Adeline is at about that age where she's starting to think about having a sweetheart. Adeline then states that she wants a boyfriend who is kind, caring, dependable, and hunky. She does say that Kirby has the perfect face for her boyfriend, but nothing else really works. I love that King DDD is questioning how Kirby is hunky. How is he not? Look at him. Adeline then gets the idea to draw her ideal boyfriend body and then place Kirby in ball form on top of it, acting as the head. The environment very quickly devolves into a high school romantic comedy manga, with Adeline asking Kirb to walk her home. Adeline and Choo Choo fighting over him, and then both girls getting mad at him when Kirb suggests the two girls can share him. After that little spat, Adeline ends the game of romantic comedy and moves on to something else, leaving Kirby to feel like his heart was just toyed with. This one was a shorty, but also a goodie. The chapter's jokes were actually pretty funny, didn't overstay their welcome, and once again didn't overly rely on one character being a menace to another. I'm starting to really like Adeline in these chapters. Being a character who is unapologetically blunt but also still a sweet person, I hope to see more chapters starring her. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 1 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 2, The Biggest Cat Craze of All Time? The chapter begins with the narrator recounting how having cat characters in mangas now are all the rage and is guaranteed popularity. When the characters wonder if they have a cat character, they point to Nago. Nago, however, rejects his identity as a cat and says that he's moved on from that. Kirby has a hard time accepting this, wanting there to be some cat popularity in his manga series, so Nago suggests Kirby should be a cat. At first, Kirby turns himself into a ripoff of the Battle Cats mobile game, but he switches back to his normal face before any lawsuits can be filed. All of a sudden, King DDD really starts becoming a cat person, treating Kirby like an actual cat, even renaming him to Peepo Cat. Kirby grows bored of this very quickly, but King DDD already grew too attached to Peepo Cat, begging him to go back. Kirby doesn't want to at first, but then goes back after he finds out he can mooch food and chores out of the king if he plays along. King DDD realizes that this isn't right and starts crying for Peepo Cat, but Kirby renounces his cat identity. When King DDD gets really down in the dumps, Nago decides to embrace his catness once again for DDD's sake. Unfortunately, DDD specifically wants Peepo Cat in the end. This one is another whatever chapter. Ironically, this is a chapter that could have benefited from more pages. It just feels like they didn't do enough with the concept to warrant calling it a chapter. It almost feels like it cuts off in the middle. There's no resolution, there's no sense of completion, it just ends. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 2 gets my rating of a C-. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 3, Metanites Big Face Reveal? The chapter begins with the narration telling us how cool Meta Knight is. He is the perfect celebrity within Dreamland, but that gets people wondering what he looks like behind the mask. Paparazzi starts chasing Meta Knight, trying to get him to remove his mask. Kirby steps in to help him by inhaling the interviewers. Meta Knight thanks Kirby, but then Kirby tries to take a peek. Meta Knight gets mad when both Kirby and King DDD are just like the paparazzi, wanting to see under the mask, so he gets mad and leaves. As he flies away though, Meta Knight's mask falls off. Meta Knight puts on a temporary mask and goes off to find his old one. He finds Kirby wearing it, pretending that he's Meta Knight like a little kid would. Meta Knight tries to take his mask back, but Kirby has everyone fooled into thinking that he's Meta Knight, especially since he can make perfect sand boobies. Kirby and Meta Knight decide to settle it with a duel. Due to Meta Knight's impaired vision in his temporary mask, that mask ends up getting cracked only to reveal yet another mask. Meta Knight shows his temporary mask collection, and Kirby trades Meta Knight one for his original mask. Meta Knight puts his mask back on and flies off, only to drop it again. For a chapter with Meta Knight in it, it's not that good this time. I feel like it would have been a funny gag to find out why Meta Knight doesn't want to be seen with his mask off so much. Seeing Meta Knight's mask collection was a pretty funny bit, but other than that, it doesn't really feel like much happens, and it also doesn't feel like they tried any jokes beyond, look at Meta Knight with this weird face. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 3 gets my rating of a C-. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 4, Invincible Gordos' Weakness? The chapter begins with Kirby eating some apples from Wispy Woods with a Gordo stuck to his head. King DDD asks if he's alright, and Kirby doesn't even seem to notice that Gordo was there. When the king points it out, that's when Kirby feels the pain. Kirby gets mad at Gordo and tries to get his revenge by using his needle ability on him. Gordo then reveals that he is invincible and it's impossible for him to take damage. Kirby then looks up on his smartphone to see if that's true, and it is. But when Gordo finds out that no one really likes him because of this fact, he takes emotional damage! Gordo admits that he doesn't have a single friend and he would love to become part of the main Kirby friend roster. He even wants to try the friend circle from Kirby's star allies. When Kirby and Gordo try to embrace, it just hurts Kirby, making him conclude that they can't be friends. Kirby suggests that maybe King DDD can be his friend since he's invincible, mistaking the king taking a lot of pain with him being like Gordo. After King DDD deals with being impaled when trying a belly bump, Kirby suggests maybe they can't be friends, but Gordo can be his pet? That's creepy, Kirby. They then see that Gordo's biggest weakness with making friends is his spikes. They hurt too many people. Gordo then goes off and comes back, showing he rounded off his spikes. When he returns, he expects to be able to finally make some friends, but then takes the biggest damage of his life when Kirby doesn't even recognize him. What's funny to me is that in this panel, to me, he just looks like dark matter. Another example of an okay short chapter. I like how the chapter works into the player's perception of not really liking Gordos at all, since they're just an annoyance in the Kirby games. Creating a story about trying to find him a friend is actually a pretty creative idea. The gags were okay, but the ending joke of Kirby not recognizing Gordo was actually pretty funny. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 4 gets my rating of a B. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 5, Ribbon, the Grown-Up Lady? The chapter begins with Ribbon making her entrance. Everyone swoons over Ribbon, calling her cute and giving her gifts, and they even compare her to an idol. All of a sudden, Ribbon starts feeling like she needs to act like an adult and doesn't want to be treated like a little kid anymore. This confuses everybody, but Choo Choo and Adeline understand. Adeline and Ribbon even make plans to go to a singles mixer? What? Kirby tries to change the subject by suggesting to play a game of hide and seek, but Ribbon would rather play truth or dare. Ribbon draws the king's stick and dares number 3 to kiss her, which ends up being Kirby. Before any of that can happen, Meta Knight overhears the game and misunderstands what they're talking about. He thinks that they are choosing the next king of Dreamland by luck of the draw. He wants it to be determined by a test of raw strength. Ribbon finds Meta Knight so cool and manly that she asks him out on a date. Meta Knight is just confused and treats her like the little kid she is. This makes Ribbon cry, making Adeline and Choo Choo mad at him, which just confuses Meta Knight even more. Kirby swoops in to try and hit the rebound, and they agree to a date at the beach. When they get there, they just start playing like little kids again, setting everything back to normal. This is definitely one of the funnier chapters we've read through so far. I love that Meta Knight is the most serious character in this gag manga, and him being confused at the madness going on around him will never not be funny to me. They even take a dig at the character designer for Adeline and Ribbon. Damn, that's ballsy. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 5 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 6, 4 DDD Expedition Team. The chapter begins in the dense forest of southern Dreamland. King DDD has set up an expedition team to explore the dangers of this unknown territory. They start rolling the camera in order to get this on live TV, with Walkie providing live commentary. All of a sudden, King DDD starts getting eaten by a giant flower, but gets saved by Ku in the nick of time. Walkie then starts suffering the same fate, only to realize that it's Kirby who is eating him because he wants the mic ability. King DDD scolds him and continues to scold him when he keeps fooling around. They do find mysterious big footprints that they believe to belong to that of Bigfoot, but it's the Kirby manga, so you know it's actually Kirby's doing. King DDD finally comes upon some ancient ruins to explore, and Ku points out some more only for him to immediately know that it's Kirby, Rick, and Kine using the giant stone ability to pretend. Kirby starts to get bored and then plays TV producer, trying to make the show more spicy. He fakes a possession, sets DDD on fire, freezes him, and painfully combines everyone to look like the Loch Ness Monster in silhouette. King DDD gets so beaten up, Kirby takes a picture of him and calls it an alien encounter. Roll credits. Gag after gag after gag after gag. It just breathes incoherence in this one. Just another chapter of Kirby being a problem for the sake of Kirby being a problem. It just doesn't translate to anything that funny. Hell, this one just feels like it has no substance at all. It just exists. With all of that in mind, Volume 4, Chapter 6 gets my rating of an F. Next up is Volume 4, Chapter 7, Super Power-Up Old Kirby. The chapter begins as a normal day starts in this universe. King DDD is angrily chasing Kirby for eating all of his food. King DDD expresses how tired he is of Kirby being this hyper all the time, and after seeing a bunch of elderly people, gets the idea that Kirby wouldn't be so hyper if he was old. King DDD finds Mr. Tick-Tock's brother, T-Tick-Tock. T-Tick-Tock then spins his clock hands and then beats the years into Kirby, turning him into an elderly man. King DDD starts teasing Kirby, but Kirby snaps right back, trying to inhale a hammer ability in order to get back at DDD. Kirby tries to inhale Bonkers, but can't inhale all the way like he used to. He eventually does it and gets a croquet mallet instead of a hammer, but still successfully beats DDD with it. As you'd predict, old Kirby is just as annoying as young Kirby, just for old people reasons instead of Kirby reasons. After realizing that old Kirby is more annoying than regular Kirby, the king says that where he went wrong is that we went in the wrong direction. He shouldn't have turned Kirby into an old man, he should have turned Kirby into a dumb stinky baby. T-Tick-Tock makes it so, only to very quickly realize he has to take care of the baby Kirby, ending the chapter. Bland, 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 bland. It's starting to get very tiresome that these chapters just resort to using the same jokes over and over and over again. Even though the chapter revolves around Kirby being old, what do we see old Kirby do that is that different from what Kirby usually does? He eats a lot, he's demanding, he sings horribly. These are all the same jokes done again and again in every Kirby Annoys DDD chapter. It's tiring after reading 30 chapters of this. With all of that in mind, Volume 4, Chapter 7 gets my rating of an F. Next up is Volume 4, Chapter 8, Goodbye, King DDD. The chapter begins with Kirby and King DDD hanging out on a warm afternoon where they both decide to take their afternoon nap. Gooey decides that he wants to take a nap too and crawls into Kirby's mouth in order to do so. Kirby spits him out, so Gooey decides to crawl into DDD's mouth instead. In his sleep, however, King DDD swallows Gooey. The next day, King DDD goes to the hospital complaining of stomach issues. The doctor shows the king the x-rays he took and points out the black mass. King DDD misunderstands what the doctor is thinking. Instead of seeing that Gooey is going to be inside King DDD until tonight, the king takes it that he has cancer and is going to die tonight. King DDD starts sulking and reflecting on how much time he's wasted through his life and tries to think of how he's going to spend the last day. He tries to get into reading but ends up dozing off, wasting more time. The king then tries to exercise but wonders what worrying about his health is going to benefit him now. When Kirby and the others show up, King DDD realizes just how much he's going to miss them. The king decides to spend his last day with his friend only to immediately be beat up by Kirby. King DDD, shockingly enough, doesn't get mad and even treats Kirby to a feast and lets him sing. King DDD even tells Poppy that he can succeed him after he dies, which just leaves Poppy more confused. King DDD then realizes that if he dies tomorrow, he won't have a legacy for people to remember him by, so he decides to do something drastic. King DDD then hears a cry for help and he jumps into action, trying to save a kid from drowning in the river. Meanwhile, Poppy goes to the hospital to see what's going on with DDD, where the misunderstanding is cleared up to him. Back to the action, King DDD tries to save the kid, but Kirby succeeds in doing it instead, leaving everyone impressed and the king to drown. All of a sudden, gooey pops out of the king's stomach. Poppy then shows up and tells the king that he isn't going to die. King DDD, about to fall down a waterfall, then begs for his life. In the nick of time, Kine catches the king in his mouth and saves him. The chapter ends with everyone glad that King DDD will live after all. Though this chapter didn't have that many laughs in it, it sure as hell made up for it with it just being an entertaining character piece. King DDD actually missing all of his friends and wanting to leave a legacy is actually an interesting bit of characterization for the king. I didn't expect a cancer mention in a piece of Kirby media, but fuck it, go off. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 8 gets my rating of an A-. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 9, The Haunting at Chile Shrine? The chapter begins on another hot day in Dreamland. The gang decides to go to Chile's shrine to go cool off in front of the eternal ice. As they chill, Kirby hands out some shaved ice to his friends, only to reveal that it was made from the eternal ice. Also, Gooey is licking it. Dude. Kirby. Really? After this, everyone at the shrine gets cursed. Poppy gets a deformed face, Rick's piss freezes in place, Jesus Christ! Koo's milkshake froze so they can't drink it. All horrible things to happen to a person. The ice shows up to get revenge on DDD next and starts chilling his tummy so that he'll get the runs. Kirby and Gooey show up in order to get more shaved ice and find the ice demon. Kirby inhales him and, for whatever reason, freezes DDD in an ice ball. They place the DDD ice ball on the shrine and boom, curse lifted and chapter over. Did anything that constitutes a story really happen here? Kirby literally shows up, causes a problem, fucks off while everyone suffers, and then comes back and accidentally fixes it. What kind of a gag manga chapter is that? We get more horror here than comedy. Just a whole lot of nothing. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 9 gets my rating of an F. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 10, The Cursed Kirby Doll. The chapter begins with King DDD and Poppy meeting with a hooded figure. He gives him a voodoo doll of Kirby and tells him that in order for it to work, it needs the tear of the person they want to control. They demonstrate with a DDD voodoo doll, and Poppy almost takes out the king right there and then. King DDD and Poppy take both dolls and plan to enact their plan on Kirby at the festival the next day. Unbeknownst to them, they drop the DDD doll and it gets picked up by Mr. Frosty, who then uses it as a prize at the festival. At the festival, Kirby sees the DDD doll and Mr. Frosty stand and goes to win it. Shoot down the doll and you win. As King DDD finds Kirby and goes to make him cry, Kirby shoots his shot. He hits him and the king feels it. Kirby wins the doll and shows it off to the king. This is when King DDD and Poppy realize that Kirby has the voodoo doll and they have to get it back. Kirby, being Kirby, is very rough with the doll, not realizing that it's hurting DDD too. King DDD gets desperate and tries to trade Kirby the voodoo doll of him for the DDD doll. Gooey swoops in though and trades the Kirby doll for his lighter. Why does Gooey have a lighter? What was he planning on doing here? Desperate times call for desperate measures, and boy howdy have we already gotten desperate. Poppy does DDD up to look like a life-size doll of himself. This surprisingly works as Kirby trades the voodoo doll for it. Poppy takes the voodoo doll and goes to bring it somewhere safe, but accidentally trips and loses the doll. Because it fell into an ice cream freezer, now the real DDD is stuck and can't move. The other friends don't believe that it's actually a life-size doll, so they start pinching and prodding at him to get him to crack, just torturing the hell out of the king. Kirby starts crying and says he doesn't want the doll anymore, as Poppy finds the voodoo doll and returns to make sure the king is okay. Kirby takes the opportunity to take the voodoo doll back, continuing DDD's torture, ending the chapter. This is one of the few times that DDD endures torture and actually deserves it. Everything that happened to him in this chapter was what he fully intended on doing to Kirby, so the torture feels justified. It's not just Kirby being annoying for annoying's sake. It also makes sense for Kirby to be treating the doll roughly. He doesn't know that it's causing the real DDD pain. He just thinks it's a doll. This is an example of a DDD torture porn done right. I just wish it was a little funnier. With all of that in mind, Volume 4 Chapter 10 gets my rating of a B+. Next up is Volume 4 Chapter 11, Training in Secret Sweepstakes Techniques. The chapter begins with King DDD losing another sweepstakes. King DDD was trying to win a superhero transformation belt from a magazine, and he, of course, lost. When King DDD goes out to buy more postcards to send in, he sees that Paint Roller won the prize he wanted. Kirby reveals to the king that Paint Roller is a sweepstakes master, as they show him just how much he's won. He should go on Denpa Shonen's prize life. Just call him Nasubi. King DDD pleads with Paint Roller to teach him their secrets. Paint Roller agrees, but only if they promise to see it through to the end. Paint Roller buys a lot of postcards to get them started. Before they start signing though, they must cleanse their body, bow deep at the postcards, and meditate, clearing your mind of the thought of winning. They then start to sign the postcards, but Paint Roller tells them not to rush their way through it, and to be creative with the message with neat handwriting. Why is it that when King DDD hears creative, he sends in a ransom note? He gives them an example and says that the postcard needs to stand out since they get thousands of them. Soon enough, this becomes a calligraphy class as Paint Roller starts nitpicking every little thing. After finally getting some postcards that Paint Roller will accept, they wish each postcard good luck, and then use Paint Roller's lucky mailbox, which is located at the top of a perilous mountain. They climb the mountain, not without falling a few times, and make it up to the mailbox. After cleaning the mailbox and leaving it an offering, they are finally ready to put in the postcards one by one. Paint Roller guarantees they'll win a prize. Later, it seems that Kirby has won a sukiyaki meal set, and King DDD still won nothing. King DDD starts hastily signing postcards again, saying that it must be quantity over quality. Poppy then points out that the king never put his name or address on the postcards, finally explaining why he's never won anything. This is the first chapter in a while where I can actually say it was funny. I remember being a kid and entering all of those sweepstakes in order to win crazy prizes and the inevitable disappointment when I didn't win them. Do they even do sweepstakes anymore? I feel like that stuff came and went with the early 2000s. Honestly, just how much this joke got escalated was what really got me. When the mailbox was at the top of the mountain, that actually got a chuckle out of me. I didn't expect that. With all of that in mind, Volume 4, Chapter 11 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 4, Chapter 12, Legendary Teacher Kirby. The chapter begins in an alternate universe where the Kirby cast of characters are all in school. If I had a nickel for every time DDD was a principal of a school in Kirby media, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but you already know the rest of the joke. Principal DDD and Vice Principal Poppy see that the student body is getting out of control again. After Mr. Blocky quits his job, they must enlist the help of the most legendary teacher of them all, the legendary teacher, Mr. Kirby. Principal DDD introduces the new teachers to this class of characters that couldn't care less. At first, Kirby does his usual Kirby shenanigans, just being generally annoying and not really understanding the assignment. Poppy starts to lose faith, but DDD tells him to trust the process. Kirby then starts to make an inspirational speech about the value of education, only to make it about food again. The next day, the entire student body decides to boycott Kirby's class. Not even a single student shows up. Kirby is told that the students are all at the bank, just hanging out. Kirby shows up with a whole squadron of police and someone's mom? When Kirby decides to talk to them alone, he tries to inspire them enough to go back on their own, only for them to be forced back by a song and dance number performed by Kirby. Somehow, this saves the school, ending the chapter. It's all the same jokes. Kirby's loud. Kirby doesn't know what his goals are. Kirby eats a lot. Kirby sings bad. It's the same jokes every single time. You have a whole school setting to work with when it comes to jokes, and you just tell the same 4 jokes. They don't take advantage of the school setting at all. This very much could have been a normal Kirby chapter, and nothing would be different. At this point, I'm just craving more creative jokes. With all of that in mind, Volume 4, Chapter 12 gets my rating of an F. Next up is Volume 4, Chapter 13, Kirby's Past and Future. The chapter begins with Kirby announcing that you can read the Kirby manga online. Oh my god, really? In Japan. Oh, not there. Kirby, DDD, and Poppy reflect on how much they've changed in art style, including another joke about Volume 25. I'm just so curious to see what the hell happened in this volume to garner such scrutiny from its own author. They even reflect that they've been doing this manga for 25 years. We then get a look at how Hikawa does his manga. Even though most manga have gone completely digital, Hikawa continues to draw this manga completely analog because he really likes looking at the finished physical pages when he's done. They try to think of a way for the manga to grow, and we get this crazy intricate panel. Wow. Poor Hikawa. They then get into a discussion of how manga may be completely taken over by AI, which the author kinda hopes for. Agree to disagree, I guess. Kirby points out that he'd be out of a job then, and Hikawa shuts up. The chapter ends with an ad for Kirby Manga Mania. This is probably one of the most self-serving chapters of this manga yet. This whole chapter is Hikawa just talking to himself about his own manga and reflecting. That's cool and all, but we've already gotten this type of chapter in Volume 1 when they first came back to drawing it. It just feels like a retread. It does get me very curious about this very infamous Volume 25 where Hikawa claims his art style was at its worst. I just wish the time was taken to make an actual chapter instead of what really just boils down to a behind-the-scenes extra. With all of that in mind, Volume 4, Chapter 13 gets my rating of a D. That concludes Volume 4. Before we continue, we will have yet another presentation by our friends on the DUBASSES team. Enjoy.
Woohoo!
Looking good!
Let's go rescue Peaches!
That ain't her name. It's Princess Peach.
Just you wait, Peaches!
I told you, it's Princess Peach!
Here I come, Peaches!
It's Princess Peach already!
At this point, let's just go with Peaches.
Leave him in the dust, Magnum Kirby!
I can't drive on an empty stomach.
Fair enough.
Okie dokie, I'm full of energy. Let's go!
Over the weight limit, you're disqualified! You big dummy!
Thank you everybody so much for watching the video, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one, and hit that bell to know when a new video comes out as soon as it comes out. I'd like to give a special shout out to Andrew's Retro Games and Daniel Hawkins for being the most well-esteemed guests of them all. If you would like a shout out in every video, as well as early access to videos and exclusive emojis for the live streams, make sure you become a channel member. Channel memberships really help us out, and if we get enough of them, we'll be able to make bigger and better content for you. Speaking of live streams, I will be streaming Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with the following games on screen. So if you would like to join me and talk to me directly, you can join me there. With that, I'm Bottles, and I bid you, my well-esteemed guests, adieu.